With Star Wars Episode III, creator George Lucas faced a daunting task. This final film in the Star Wars series not only has to bridge the gap between Attack of the Clones and A New Hope, but it has to conclude the saga of the Skywalker family, filling in the backstory that fans have speculated about for over 20 years.
A story is one big long story, so it's, a lot of the issues that have been built have been designed to fit. This is really like, these three are really one film, and the other three are really one film, and then they're connected because one is the father and the other is the son. It's kind of a father and son duo, or duet. So the one thing about this one, it did have a lot of things to come together that have been sort of built up, and obviously they go on. And I had a plan for it and how it was going to work. And when I went and wrote the first story, or the first draft of the script, the first outline, a lot of the issues that I had planned to do, I couldn't. It just sort of got way too big, and a lot of these side stories got in the way. So I basically had to focus on the main issue and get that story told. And that was the hardest part. Once I jettisoned a lot of the stuff that I'd created and just said, no, this is a story about Anakin, and let everybody else fall by the wayside, then it worked. And so then I wrote that story treatment, and then that one is the one that I've actually used to make the movie with. I mean, it's just the bare bones version of but over years you sort of doodle on the sides, and then all the doodles get where you want to take over, but you can't. At some point you got to cut the doodles off and go to the story.
That process of focusing on the main story proved to be a challenging one.
Yeah, it took it, I'd take a deep breath and say, okay, look, I can't. There's a lot of things in here that's fun, but I can't do it. And it's kind of what I had to do on the original Star Wars. I did it and I said, well, this is great, but I can't make this into a movie. It's just not possible. So I'll take the first act and I'll just leave those other things for another time, and I'll come back and make those into a movie. And that's kind of how the whole thing started. But this one I'm sort of at the end, so I can't do that. So I just have to say, well, we'll let these other characters just... Yeah, they're secondary characters, and not really... Their story is not that important in the end. I mean, obviously interesting to fans and things, but it's not telling the real story.
The core of the Star Wars saga is a story that dates back over 25 years. A story that George Lucas is only now bringing to a conclusion. Sitting down to write this final chapter, was there anything in the telling of the tale that surprised its creator?
Not really. And it's basically been the same story the whole time. It's one. The only thing is to say the hard part was that over the years it's built up a lot of barnacles, and then coming to the realization I had to knock those barnacles off and just take it down to its bones and make it was the hardest part. I mean, that was, I wouldn't say it was a surprise. I hadn't realized how many barnacles were on it, until I started getting down to it, and then I started saying, oh God, And it was kind of, on another kind of level, is what happened on Return of the Jedi, is I had so many characters, and I felt that I wanted to make sure they all got woven into the story, even though a lot of them are secondary characters and stuff. And I managed to do that, but in this one I really couldn't do it. It just wasn't. I mean, this story is way more intense than, Return of the Jedi. Even though that one sort of culminates everything, but this one actually does it, let's say, in a much more melodramatic way. I mean, the only thing that's close to this is kind of the scene in Empire when he says it, I'm your father. But this whole movie's like that. I call it soap opera stuff. Yeah. Good stuff. You did what with whom, and you're related to what, and how did this happen?
And will this epic tale result in a longer film?
Well, I'm aiming for, I don't know, a 2 hour and 10 minute, 2 hour and 15 minute movie, something like that, with the titles. But, if it goes to 2.5 hours, it will. But I'm not going to let it go much beyond 2.5 hours. Okay. I think I can get the story told in a amount of time. All the other chapters are about that length. The longest one was the last one, which is 2 hours and 20 minutes. So I would give this one an extra 10 minutes maybe. But, the first one was told in 2 hours. And in theory, I should be able to do that again.
With principal photography having wrapped in September, George is moving on to the part of production he enjoys the most.
The post. Because that's where you really get to make the movie. The script is just the blueprint. I say the shooting is like going out and foraging for wood, and then you actually get to build it once you have the blueprint and the materials. So that's the exciting part.
Has George found directing the final chapter in the Star Wars saga to be an easier or more enjoyable process this time around?
The prequel's been a lot easier because primarily I don't have to answer to anybody, and my entire life isn't on the line like it was in the first three. So this time it's, whatever happens, it's going to be okay. That takes a lot of pressure off right there. And then, over the years I've learned how to do this. Phantom Menace was an interesting jump in learning a whole new technology and a whole new way of approaching things, and that was kind of exciting. And but it was challenging at the same time. I was going, places nobody'd ever gone before, and it was a little bit. And I was betting on it with my own money. There was no guarantee it was going to work. I mean, it could have very easily been More American Graffiti or, countless other sequels that didn't quite make it, after the first three, and then we said, ooh. And I was taking a lot of risks, and I knew I was taking risks. And I knew if I made the central character an 8 or 9-year-old boy, that there would be a whole group of people to just check out. So no way I'm going to watch that. So I was doing a lot of things that I shouldn't have been doing. I mean, if I was just to make a hit movie. And so I didn't know whether it was going to actually work. So that had a certain amount of pressure on me, because I wasn't convinced. And, again, I didn't, I would survive it if it failed. But now I know how to use the new technology. I know how to make movies this way. I'm very facile with it. The crew is very facile with it. We've done 3 movies together. So things move right along. And there's no guesswork. There's not a lot of big question marks that we used to have about how are we going to end up doing this. ILM was a lot calmer. And so that's, it's just a lot easier, in the end. I mean, part of it is just age and experience, and part of it is not having the pressure of a failure. Fails, it fails. It's not going to make any difference to me in terms of, I'm not going to be ruined or anything. That's what you're really worried about, man.
That's the end of this edition of Galactic Uplink. Thanks to everyone on the Star Wars Episode III crew in Australia who made these interviews possible. Now, all we have to do is patiently wait until 2005 for the conclusion of the epic Skywalker saga in Star Wars Episode III. See you at the movies.